In the opening pages of the Hebrew Bible, hidden within the story of Noah's flood, lies one of the most mysterious and debated passages in all ancient history. Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to 4, contains a bizarre and haunting narrative. It speaks of beings called the sons of God, who came down to the earth, saw that human women were beautiful, and took them as wives. Their offspring were known as Nephilim. The ancient text describes them as the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. But who, or what, were Nephilim? Were they the children of fallen kings, alien visitors, or supernatural hybrid monsters? Today, we will explore the theology, the ancient history, and the biological mystery behind the Nephilim. And ultimately, we will ask the question that cuts through every theory. Could spiritual beings truly possess the DNA required to father a race of giants? To uncover the truth, we first have to understand the name itself. For a long time, biblical scholars believe the word Nephilim derived from the Hebrew root naphal, meaning to fall. Under this theory, they were the fallen ones. However, modern scholars, including Dr. Michael Heiser, have noted that deriving Nephilim from the Hebrew word for falling creates severe structural problems in Hebrew grammar. Instead, a major scholarly consensus now points to a different origin: ancient Aramaic. In Aramaic, the word naphila literally means giant or monstrous being. When ancient Jewish scholars translated the Hebrew Bible into Greek centuries before Christ, they chose the word gigantes, meaning giants. They were not describing fallen warriors. The ancient world understood the Nephilim to be beings of terrifying, immense physical size. But who were their fathers, the sons of God? For the first 4 centuries of the early Christian church, and throughout all of ancient Judaism, there was a dominant consensus known as the supernatural view. This view held that the sons of God were divine, angelic beings who rebelled against heaven and descended to earth. An ancient Jewish text, the Book of Enoch, expands on this dramatically, naming these fallen angels the Watchers. According to the text, 200 watchers abandoned their heavenly posts out of lust for human women, swearing a mutual oath of defiance on the summit of Mount Hermon. Led by a commander named Simjaza, they did far more than produce giant offspring. A second leader, Azazel, became far darker, a teacher of sin. According to the Book of Enoch, Azazel taught human men the art of advanced metallurgy, showing them how to forge swords, shields, and battle armor, introducing mechanized warfare to the ancient world. He taught women the crafting of cosmetics and ornate jewelry. Other watchers revealed the secrets of astrology, the signs of the earth, and the dark arts of sorcery. Humanity grew powerful, but it grew deeply, catastrophically corrupt. This story did not arise in a vacuum. To fully understand Genesis 6, we must look beyond Israel to the world surrounding it. The ancient Sumerians and Babylonians had their own tradition of divine beings coming to earth. They called them the Apkallu. The Apkallu were 7 primordial sages, often depicted as part man and part fish or part man and part bird, who emerged from the sea to bestow humanity with civilization, science, and the arts. The Babylonians celebrated them as great cultural heroes. But scholar Ronald Hindle has demonstrated that the authors of Genesis deliberately inverted this Babylonian tradition. In the biblical narrative, these same kinds of beings are not glorious civilizers. They are cosmic rebels. The knowledge they brought was forbidden knowledge, and it led directly to catastrophic destruction. The biblical writers were making a bold theological statement. The celebrated god-kings and divine heroes worshipped by the surrounding nations were, in God's eyes, nothing more than fallen angels. And now we arrive at the greatest mystery of all. If the supernatural view is correct and angelic beings descended to mate with human women, we are forced to confront what appears to be a scientific and theological impossibility. The creation account in Genesis 1 establishes a fundamental biological principle. All living things must reproduce, each according to their own kind. Angels, as spiritual beings, stand entirely outside this earthly biological order. From a scientific standpoint, reproduction requires DNA encoded in chromosomes. DNA is the information code that directs every function of a living organism. Because spiritual beings are immaterial, they have no physical bodies, and therefore no biological DNA to contribute to a human conception. To get around this enormous problem, researchers have proposed two main theories. The first is the possession theory, which suggests that fallen angels did not manifest bodies of their own, but instead hijacked and possessed the physical bodies of mortal men to procreate with human women. The second ventures into territory that sounds almost like science fiction, the genetic manipulation theory. Under this view, the fallen angels used their superior knowledge of creation to engage in literal genetic engineering, mixing human DNA with foreign material to produce hybrid offspring. Proponents of this view argue that this is exactly why God sent the Great Flood, not merely as moral punishment, but as an act of divine genetic cleansing, to eradicate the corrupted bloodline and preserve the pure human genome through Noah. Genesis 6 verse 9 describes Noah as perfect in his generations, a phrase that, in Hebrew, tamim, conveys the sense of physical incorruption. Some scholars see in that word a deliberate marker. Noah's bloodline alone remained genetically untainted. But when we step back and apply rigorous logic to theology, a different, sobering conclusion emerges. If the sons of God were genuinely spiritual entities, they remained, at their core, non-biological beings. They inhabited a dimension fundamentally separate from human flesh and blood. Without human DNA, true biological reproduction between a spirit and a human is not merely unlikely. It is impossible. Even Jesus himself stated clearly that angels in heaven do not marry and do not reproduce. Matthew 22 verse 30. So even if fallen spiritual beings corrupted human cultures, inspired violence, transmitted forbidden knowledge, or even possessed and operated through ancient oppressors, they could not be biologically fathered in the truest physical sense. According to this interpretation, Genesis 6 is not about angels at all, but it is about the breakdown of moral boundaries. Mixing of the two groups represents the collapse of spiritual integrity, where those who were meant to follow God abandoned God. Human sins, not angelic biology, are the central problem. This leads directly into the flood narrative, where God judges a world filled with corruption and violence. In this view, the Nephilim are not hybrid beings, but powerful, possibly tyrannical humans, mighty men known for their strength and influence. Later in the Bible, in the Book of Numbers, the Nephilim are mentioned again, but in a context that suggests fear and exaggeration rather than precise description. The mystery of the Nephilim continues to capture the imagination. But when we examine the text closely, alongside theology, biology, and context, a clearer picture emerges. The idea that angels produced human offspring may be interesting, but it raises more problems than it solves. Instead, Genesis 6 points us to something far more relevant: the corruption of humanity and the consequences of moral compromise, which led to the global flood to remove the sins. But even then, one man remained. One family stood uncorrupted, and through that narrow thread, the story of redemption was preserved. In our next episode, we will explore one of the most puzzling changes in all biblical history: the dramatic shortening of human lifespans after the flood. Before the flood, people lived for nearly 900 years. Afterward, that number collapsed to fewer than 100. What changed, and why? That answer may surprise you.